Warriors of National Guard recruiting. This is Command Sergeant Major retired Dave Eustice with military recruiting experts. I have the founder of the Training Tuesday podcast with me for our last episode of the Training Tuesday podcast. I believe it is 449. And so it's been a long run. It's coming to an end. So Mr. Doug Siggins, here we go. We've reached the finish line.
Here we are. Yeah, it's been a long road for sure.
Well, I mean, when you started this thing of sharing ideas and trying to improve the organization, I think your mission has been accomplished.
Well, I hope. I still question that sometimes, but I hope so. I hope a little bit. I don't know. I hope so. That was my intent. Somebody would benefit somewhere from the efforts.
Well, there's a lot of good content that's out there on the website. And kind of like we talked before, what do you plan on doing with that material?
Yeah, I'm going to leave it there for now. It doesn't cost me too much to leave it there. So it'll be open access for a couple months, probably, maybe till the end of the year. And then if nobody has an interest in taking manage it or then I'm going to just terminate it. it'll be done, but you'll be able to download anything that's on there free so if there's anything of interest, you can always access it, download it.
So you got till Christmas, everybody.
Yep.
To get it. It was kind of interesting, and I would say there's probably some thought processes out there of people that didn't stay with the podcast, that it's not young and punchy and have the latest trends on it, which is in recruiting, I think that is somewhat comical. Because I believe if we would have figured out what the easy button is, everybody would know that.
For sure.
And recruiting is just not easy. It never has been easy. Maybe Vietnam era was pretty sweet.
When they were drafting people.
Yeah, when people were getting drafted, that might have been an easier time, but I still think that most people then still didn't want to join.
Yeah.
And that is out there. I think, recruiting times now are different than recruiting times 10 years ago, but they're mostly the same.
Yeah. Well, if there is an easy button, which I agree with you, there isn't, I think you've given me more just fundamental belief that it's possible. I think sometimes, if circumstances are difficult, you don't see a lot of people around you succeeding, you buy the lie that it's not possible. And one of the things, as I've listened to you over the years, that you've reiterated, and I think is an important message, is no, it's possible. Like, it really is possible. There's people that are doing it. And if we would truly be willing to do the self-examination and assess our labors, that we could do it too. So while we're not looking for an easy button, I think having hope that we can do it is essential. And I think that's one of the things you've done for the organization.
Yeah, I think that's important. I also think turning off all the noise is important.
Yeah.
We'll talk about who our leadership is. And no offense to anybody's leadership, everybody complains about leadership.
Yeah.
Everybody. And for the leaders right now, when you weren't in leadership, you were complaining about leadership. That's the reality. But it doesn't matter who your boss is in this business. In recruiting, it doesn't matter. there's an old saying amongst baseball managers that managers, they don't win any games. They can lose some, but they don't win any games. Players win the games.
Yeah.
That is the reality, and we're all individual contributors, and we've seen it so many times in so many states where the new fired up recruiter that believes in the organization, that's super excited about the job, they go into an area that hasn't been successful in the past, and holy cow, we get a whole bunch of enlistments out of there. They make mission, and then after a few years, it was like, well, that area, that's a key area for us now. When,
Yeah.
3 years ago, it was like, well, nobody wants to go there.
Yeah.
It's based on the new kid coming in and just being excited. And I think that is part of the most foundational part. Believe in this organization. We got something really good, and acknowledge the fact that sure, it's not for everybody, but I've not come across a way other than asking to figure out who it's for. So, and I do think that we can look at our own situation and say, well, no one's ever had it as tough as me. And that's just another soldier thing too. Like when you went to basic training, it was way tougher than the person that went 2 months later.
For sure.
Like no one's had it worse than us.
Yeah.
And
But I think that's one of the reasons I was, I really it started out of desperation. I was listening to a lot of podcasts and a lot of sales training from people out selling other products, and Jeb Blount, I forget what his organization is, Entree Leadership with Dave Ramsey. I was listening to Advanced Selling podcast, and I was like, we have got to have a voice like this within our organization. There has to be somebody that's saying that allows us to collaborate, right? So that's, I think, one of the greatest harms within the Army National Guards. We are 54 individual entities all trying to solve the same problem.
Yeah.
And some of us are doing really well, and some of us are struggling, but there's no way to collaborate that, to share it across the organization, say, hey, this is working here, and this is what we're doing. And so I said, well, if we could just talk to each other, and it's different than National Guard Bureau trying to push something down rather than something coming from the field and growing out of the field. Like, hey, let's just share ideas and encourage one another. And I was like, wow, that would be amazing if I could hear what the guys in Montana are doing. Or I was desperate because I was so isolated. Like I live 400 miles from my NCOIC and my headquarters, and 2 or 3 times a year we'd get together, but the rest of the time I was on my own. I mean, very on my own. So it's like, wow, I think we could do something that could actually unite the force in a way that would be really profitable for us as we utilized each other in our expertise. I was always very intimidated by that because I was in the middle of Wyoming. I was a nobody from the middle of Wyoming. I didn't have any credibility. I didn't know anybody. So it was when you kind of came along, I was like, oh, finally. So we have a voice and some credibility and some experience that can truly add to what's going on here. And that's when I really became excited about the possibilities. I think you've done a great job.
Well, I appreciate that. But it takes somebody to get it started. And I still think there's value in it. I do. But I think there is the way someone would decide to sign on to the podcast and the way that they would evaluate it in the future ended up being a moving target.
Yeah, for sure.
And we've had some great people give great ideas on the podcast. They're still available. And I would encourage people to go back and listen to some of those, especially the last group. that we've had on,
Yeah, for sure.
the people that got a lot of experience, but there's a theme amongst all of that. These senior people that are not going to be around the organization that much longer, really, those sergeants major, and master sergeants that we interviewed. The theme is dial in, get committed, do as much of what you can do, and this mission will get delivered. Stick to the basics.
Yeah.
Across the board. And it's really kind of true, like at the highest level of football, when things aren't going good, the team's going back to the drawing board today from the games on Sunday. They're going to look at what is our fundamental failures and the blocking and tackling, catching the ball, not having turnovers. And it's the same kind of thing that we need to do in recruiting is let's do the basics. Let's be talking to people every day. Let's have a foundational relationship with our schools and in our community and amongst our military network.
Yeah, that's good.
Even our worst salesman, our recruiter can have success now by being really good at the most basic things. It may not be the director's 54, but they'll get you the 12 to 15 contracts that they need to do in a year and still get all the benefits of being part of this organization. And we don't focus enough on that either.
Yeah.
Of the positives in those senior NCOs that put 17, 18 years in on the recruiting side. They stayed because there was a lot of positives associated with being in the recruiting battalion.
Yeah. Dave, one of the things that I struggle with personally, and I've watched kind of throughout the time I've been doing this, is one of the things that's not addressed well is fear. The recruiting, I mean, you were a state champion wrestler. And so I think you're probably tenacious, your personality and the way, and there's very little that intimidates you. You can't be a state champion and be intimidated by an opponent or have that mindset. But I think most people that come into recruiting, it's an intimidating culture. Then you're out in the public and you're communicating, you're getting rejected. Sometimes that's a rejection you've never experienced before. It generates all kinds of fear. And one of the things I was really hoping to do is help bridge this place from this initial fear to having some success. And sometimes I think the training that we go through, it doesn't help with that piece in there. What we need is that guy who's been in the organization 17 years going with me and me watching that conversation, say there is nothing to fear here, or overcome some of those things so that I can bridge that gap to where I feel like, oh, I'm confident in it, and I'm not, the rejection isn't about me personally. And so that was a struggle for me, because that took me a while to overcome my personal fear. And I think also,
even in recruiting, we manufacture fear.
Yeah.
Like one of my recent training events, brand new recruiter says, well, our state tuition reimbursement program has changed. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can communicate that. Well, that's a manufactured fear, because the people you're going to be talking to don't have any reference point to the first, right? Yeah, so like they don't know. I mean, they don't know what it was before. So it's not a change benefit to them.
Yeah.
But think about that. Or some of the process changes that we get fearful of. And sure enough, every time when we have a process change, every time we do figure it out.
Yeah.
And we just do, like from fingerprints being required for everybody to Genesis, those things we figure it out. And one of the things that I've tried to focus on on the training side with recruiters is like who are you? Right? Like, who are you as a recruiter?
Yeah.
Well, you're a non-commissioned officer in the United States Army and in your state's National Guard.
Yeah.
Which we got the 1% that serves, and you've exceeded that 1% by becoming a non-commissioned officer. And you're even in a smaller group that's willing to be a recruiter. And what a 17-year-old or a 17-year-old's parents have to say about your craft, it really shouldn't bring you down.
Yeah.
If you know that true thing that I think is the most liberating thing in recruiting is, hey, most people aren't going to join. You could be the best salesperson in the world, but we get about 1%.
Yeah.
The
So I agree. That's I mean an identity, understanding who we are and what we're doing, building a culture that also promotes that. One of the things that was impactful for me when I started seeing some of the people that I recruited change, like I saw the dramatic, life-altering change. I mean, when I would introduce the podcast, a lot of times I talk about this generational impact, and I truly believe that you take somebody who can't think clearly about life, has no ambition, no real skill set, no support group, and you put them in the military and you train them and you give them confidence and you give them a mentoring group, and it changes their trajectory for generations. And I've seen that play out now that I've been watching these young men and women long enough. And so when I started saying, well, I'm not trying to get them to sell something, I am truly transforming their life. And if they don't take a hold of that, well, that's on them, but they had the opportunity. And so I had to really think through this cultural aspect and wanted to communicate like, we're not trying to get someone to sign up to the Army National Guard. I mean, and you've helped me actually fill in some of the pieces about the integral nature of the Army National Guard as a component of the force structure, and how integral they are to the each state. And so I think as we build this culture, I think we just need to continue to put that out to people, to say, hey, listen, what we're doing is so significant and it makes such a difference. Like, be very confident that you can offer people this thing that will change their life. It's going to make, they can, it's a vehicle, right? They can use it to really transform their entire experience.
And I've noticed that some of our recruiters really have experienced that same thing and really acknowledge it. Like, if you're in the poorer part of Missouri or Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama, those recruiters have much more confidence that I'm really making a difference, because they got pictures of people that are popping in their head that got this tremendous opportunity and ran with it, and their whole family's got a better life because of that membership. And I do think, even just looking at your own family, from time to time, saying, hey, we're doing pretty good, because of that. And this past weekend, I was back in my hometown, and my extended family was around, most been in the Guard, and brothers and their kids having been in the Guard. So one of my nephews is getting ready to get promoted to Sergeant First Class. And it was like, wow, that went by fast. He's over halfway through his career. He's got 12 years in now. And education and opportunities to get skills to start businesses, and having that gives you confidence. Like, here's some people that are really taking advantage of this program. And I think maybe there's a societal impact right now that our recruiters don't focus on that as much, because negative things seem to get more oxygen than all these positives that we got going on. And soldiering is a personal sacrifice. It is. And recruiting isn't an extended personal sacrifice. But what we're producing out of it is just just awesome. And we have soldiers that don't take advantage of every opportunity.
Absolutely.
You know, and we have people that it doesn't work out, they don't complete basic training. But on the whole, most people do make it through basic training.
Yeah.
Most people do become a valuable asset to their state, their country, and their community. And a lot of folks are super happy that we got the Guard.
Yeah.
When they need the Guard.
Yeah.
You know, so I just think the positives are something that always have to be in our mind to be in this business. And one last word on that is, like, all salespeople, right? All salespeople, when things aren't going good, they're not looking for a life raft. They're looking for someone else to pull off the boat.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a human nature thing.
Yeah.
When it's like a lot of these ideas that these high performing recruiters put out there, and these senior NCOs, they're within everybody's capability.
Yeah.
But that mindset of pulling someone else off the boat is, well, that might work for them because they got an awesome area, but it wouldn't work for me. And just deciding what narrative you want to put in your head is a big factor in success and failure, especially in this business.
Yeah. That's good. One of the other things I was thinking is, oftentimes recruiting is the first place that a soldier has failed in the military. I mean, it's the structure of the military is set up for success. Like, we train, and then we help you, and then we evaluate, but there's success built all the way through it you get in recruiting, and sometimes you're failing for the first time in your career, and you don't know, you've never been really trained on how do I deal with this and overcome this part of me, and you do it publicly, right? Our you go in the office, and our production is on the wall, and so failing publicly it can be a very hard thing for people to work through, and some of them have never done it well. And that's why I thought, the podcast could be helpful for people that were failing and didn't want to ask for help, because we're not very good at that, but there was a place where they could get some help and hear, hey, other people have struggled and failed in ways that they overcame, and there's real hope in overcoming some of those things. But somehow we have to help people work through possibly their first failure in the military.
Yeah, we're gonna keep score every day, always. But people don't ever contextualize the setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan missed a lot of shots when the game was on the line, but people don't talk about that. In order for Muhammad Ali to be 3-time heavyweight champion of the world, he had to lose the belt sometimes.
Yeah.
And so people just don't think of that, that failure has an opportunity to breed greater success.
Yeah.
And in the moment, you've been a non-commissioned officer, you've been successful in your unit, you think that you can do this recruiting thing, and you come over, and it doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
And there's a handful of people over all my time in recruiting that just had it.
Yeah.
I mean, they just, day one, like the incoming command sergeant major in Minnesota, Matt Jasper, he had it like right away. And he was successful from the first day. He was the top recruiter, promoted at minimum time every time. That's the anomaly.
Yeah.
Most people got to figure it out. Like, we figure it out by making mistakes.
Yeah, for sure.
We figure it out by failure. And if we have the right attitude, say, well, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
And learn from every mistake and take other people's ideas. That's the hardest thing to get through, because I've been at the training part here for going on 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the hardest cultural thing, is to say, okay, everybody makes a mistake, but whether it be telephone work, interview work, processing work that we do, you really learn when you screw something up. And saying, okay, well, let me see what I did that I could have done better, or let me go to someone that is having more success. And I think that those factors, and just focus on making ourselves better, without making it okay to be a failure.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like I'm saying two different things, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because like maybe I got to talk to 150 people to get someone in my office, and you only got to talk to 50. Well, I better get to talking to that 150.
Yeah.
Fair or not fair.
Yeah.
That, and ultimately, I truly believe it. Like, everybody can make mission.
Yeah.
But for some people, it's going to be harder.
Harder. Yeah.
And that's just the way that it is.
Well, that's the big thing, right? When you get to the 112th person that's told you no, and you're still supposed to believe that there's one out there in the next, 40 people you're going to talk to. And that's when our attitude makes a difference, and this belief that this is still going to work out. And I think we get in the middle of there, we get discouraged, we're not quite sure what to do about it. We think it's just us, we're doing something wrong. We're seeing the success around us, and it adds greater struggle to that. So, again, that's why I think that having something to listen to, or something that you can access in those moments and it's, for a lot of people, it's a team. Like, I never recruited for the team. Like, my closest, I had my recruiters spread out all over the north half of the state of Wyoming, and only one of them worked with a team. We were all by ourselves. And that's really hard when you're trying to stay motivated by yourself.
Yeah.
When you're hearing everybody around you tell you that you're crazy. So, your training and things like this, other podcasts are just essential to some people at that 112th phone call to say, I can keep going. There's somebody out there, and to really believe it. And
yeah,
we don't invest in people's attitudes. That's what my point is. Like, the commands don't invest in people's attitudes. I don't know what that means. There might be a sales training here and there, but to really think about, how do I keep these people focused and motivated, believing in what they're doing? And because that's, man, if once you lose heart and you get discouraged, it's hard to recover sometimes.
Yeah. And the investment in the attitude, I think, sometimes is manifested that we want to just feel good all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not, and you can't paint over lack of performance. You just can't. And you can't endorse not being successful.
Yeah.
But what it is, I think, is more one-on-one with that first line leader, saying, yeah, I get that. I get that you don't want to do it because it didn't work last time, but over time, this thing works.
Yeah.
And that's almost every area of recruiting. It's over time, in the macro, it's going to work. Yeah. But in the moment, it might not work. And for everybody, this podcast isn't going to exist anymore, right? I mean, we're not doing it anymore. Yeah. But you got to find something. And there's resources within your state. There's people that are successful within your state that you should reach out to and pick their brain, and they actually do what they say that they're doing, even if it sounds like, well, that's like, I'm already doing that. Figure out how they're doing it differently than you're doing the same thing that you're doing. So yeah. Well,
it's so you told me a little bit about the way you're going to go forward, and I'd like to hear more about that here in a minute. But the one spot, and you say this over and over, this NCOIC, or I don't know what they call it now, NCOIC spot, station command leader spot, is, in my experience, the NCOIC was very undertrained and underprepared. I didn't know what to do really. And you've talked a lot about how do you hold your people accountable? How do you assess their performance? And I know some of your training in the future is to try to really hone in on this place. And I think that's the spot. If we can help NCOICs perform with excellence, they're gonna build the attitude and the culture in the organization, the expectations, and the ways to hold people accountable in productive ways. And I think, like I said, and you really helped me see this more clearly, that the NCOIC is really integral. Master Sergeant Bond in the interview last week said it's the hardest place he ever worked.
Mhm.
And but I've watched First Sergeant Howard, Master Sergeant Bond, some of these people who have developed these cultures within their teams, and their teams are just on fire. And because the NCOIC knew what to do and was doing it well.
And when that was posted, the Bond interview was posted on Facebook, a lot of those recruiters that had worked for him, I mean, the comments were just incredible. And I know that he is very good at holding people accountable.
Yeah.
And so he's got a stern standard. However, you can read the comments. They really appreciated it. And I started military recruiting experts for NCOICs, or section chiefs, they call them now.
Yeah.
So I believe that is the center of gravity in a recruiting organization. And I also think that every sales organization has this same challenge. What gets you to become an NCOIC section chief will not cause you to be successful.
That is true.
So being that individual contributor, you're totally responsible for yourself. You got your zip codes, you got your schools. Those things that cause you to be successful in that area is get people to like you, gaining access, and really just grinding yourself. That causes you to be successful. When you got 10 people, 12 people working for you in a much bigger battle space, it's a totally different program. You got to be able to hold people accountable. You got to motivate people. You got to lead people. You got to be able to differentiate the opportunities in the space, evaluate prospecting activity given the zip codes that you have available to you. You always got to be recruiting recruiters. There's 1,000 things happening, and we keep score at the end of every day, week, month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so what I'm going to be doing in the future is I'm still going to continue to do the training in my leader curriculum. I'm reworking all of the curriculum right now, just things that we've learned over the last 6 years doing it. So that those leader seminars, there are 2-day seminars, are going to be reworked and new and fresh going into FY24, pulling in some things that we've learned over the years and a little bit more of the civilian sales management, things that are just true in our business as well. I also plan to offer, for lack of a better term, office hours. So this format, and get some states to subscribe to that. So section chiefs from all over the place can put their issues on the table, and I can offer my expertise, and we'll have expertise of the group, and have this be something on an ongoing basis, a couple times a month. And really work on the problems right now, get something to grab onto, to put into action right away, and then get feedback right away, and do that on scale with people that do not rate you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's good.
that you can be willing to say, well, I really screwed this thing up, and not think it's going to have an impact on how you're viewed or rated. So I'm excited about rolling that out and continuing to do the training. I'm still fired up about doing the training. It does make a difference. And folks out there, they want to know what is the difference between number 1 and number 54.
Yeah.
Well, it's leadership.
Yeah.
And we see it year over year where when leadership buys into, hey, these results are a reflection of our leadership and we want them to be better, and they change, they get better performance. And everybody's recruiters have the same, we got the same qualification to be a recruiter in all 54. We got the same recruiting school for all 54. We got the same product for all 54. The cars are the same. The equipment's the same. The maps operation's the same. What is the difference between a New York and whoever 54 is? I wouldn't throw them out there, but well, I know the difference is leadership. That's it. And if we change how we facilitate recruiting operations from a leadership standpoint, we will get better results. So that's what I want to focus on going forward, is helping facilitate that process so people can be more successful and recruiters will get better leadership.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm really excited about that. I think you're one of the greatest resources that the Army National Guard has. I think you're being underutilized. I wish that National Guard Bureau would get on board and just pay for your services for everybody. I think one of the things, you had an opportunity to venture out and to serve other branches of the military, and you've decided to stay within the Army National Guard because you truly are a believer in who we are and the legacy that we have. And I think that is commendable and very thankful for that, because you've been able to focus really in on the Army National Guard and keep your level of expertise and your development there. I've just seen the states that utilized you become successful, and it's consistent over the last 6 years. If they would listen to you and actually apply what you're saying, they become successful. And so I'm super excited that I know this has been a long 7 years. There's been ups and downs and you've been discouraged at times. And I just encourage you to keep persevering, because I think that your message is so important, especially in the place we're at right now in our culture and things. And so I'm very excited you're going to continue. I haven't been part of this for a while. I just edit it and send it out. So, but I'm glad that you're sticking in there, and hopefully you can gather some more people with you. There's other people that collect and to utilize in that training, and hopefully the states will take advantage of it. Yeah.
Well, I think we're winding her down. We're running out of time, but I appreciate the opportunity to having connected with you and to do this for this time. And
I would always close with a passage out of Ecclesiastes. It says, if the iron is blunt and one does not sharpen the edge, he must use more strength, but wisdom helps one to succeed. And that's the reason, that passage actually is the reason I started this podcast. Is I was like, we just need some more wisdom. And I'm thankful that you're providing that resource.
Well, awesome.